that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. The famous Tom Fennell. Every day I get up at about 4 o'clock, 3:30, sometimes as late as 4:45 if I'm sleeping in. My gosh. I have dairyman's hours, but what I do is I sit down at a computer and look over the day's news relating to energy and climate change for about 4 hours, and keep a blog called geoharvey.com or geoharvey.wordpress.com. It'll work either way.
Either way you'll get it.
Either way you can get it.
Imagine if you did just Geo Harvey, it would come up on the first page.
It probably does, yeah. But I take each news item that I think is interesting and I package it together with a synopsis of about 50-55 words together with a link going to the original article so people can look back. And I package 10 to 15 of these together and put them into a blog post, and I think I've got 1,500 plus blog posts up.
You got a lot, yeah.
Got a lot. I've got over 18,000 links up there, and you know, people can use that as a resource for looking through the history of energy things. I do it myself when I'm writing for Green Energy Times. And I'm doing some amazing research for Green Energy Times, looking at fuel that can be synthesized so that we can have fuels that are with or without carbon. Some of them have no carbon, like ammonia, and
hydrogen.
Hydrogen is another good fuel that can have no carbon associated with it. You burn it, you make water.
Ultimately, we got to do it.
Yeah, but it happens.
Because if we don't do it, the penalties
we
are pretty steep.
We don't need fossil fuels anymore.
No.
We just don't need them. We can replace them with synthetic fuels that are virtually identical. If we want to drive diesels or gas-powered cars or use home heating oil or whatever.
That's not a statement. That's a prophecy.
Well, it's a statement. We've got the technology.
Both, yeah.
We have the technology.
Oh, yeah, sure.
We don't need to fool around. And it happens that doing that is in many cases cheaper than using oil that comes out of the ground.
Well, that's going to determine everything in the long run.
In the long run, yeah, it's a crossover that's happening. So I guess maybe what we should do is start. What's our first date here?
Well, I was just going to mention one thing that I've mentioned before. We don't have enough time to get into this stuff in depth.
Yes.
And some of these articles are well worth getting into in depth.
They are.
So if you see something, go to his blog, click on the link, and it'll come up. And like I said, some of these things are really interesting.
The blog has a calendar right at the top, and you can click on a date in the calendar. And I try to read the dates out for the news for the program so that people can find it easily if that's what they want to do. Anyway, we should start, and we start off with a picture. I think
we got a picture.
We have a picture there from this is from Vermont Biz.
And it's a local picture.
It's a local picture for Vermont. It's a hydroelectric dam in the background, a covered bridge in the foreground, at Taftsville. And I'm not going to try. Well, it's Ottauquechee
River.
Okay, in the town of Woodstock, and that's a GMP image. So what do you have for a title for that, Tom?
GMP sends Enel, which is a company.
Yep.
17 megawatts hydro agreement to Public Service Board.
Okay.
That's a lot of words to say. They bought a whole bunch of
small dams.
Small hydro projects.
Yeah. Green Mountain Power announced it has filed with the Public Service Board an agreement with Enel Green Power NA to acquire 14 of Enel's small hydroelectric power stations located mainly in northern New England with approximately a total capacity of 17 megawatts. The deal will create low-cost resources for GMP. And these are not big. They're not,
No, there's a bunch of really small ones. They're not all in Vermont.
They're not all
over
in Vermont.
New England and New York.
Yep.
Enel, by the way, is an Italian company.
Yes. And so, you know, I think most of them are in Vermont. I might be mistaken about
No, there's only a few in Vermont.
Really?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
most of them are out of Vermont.
Okay.
There's 14 dams. They range in size from 0.5 megawatt to 3 megawatts.
Which is not huge.
Not very big at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
Half a megawatt
Yankee was what? 600 megawatts?
It was 640, as I recall. No, 620. It was originally 540.
Yeah, but it's a lot bigger than these guys.
Yeah, but you know, half a megawatt is the kind of thing where a few neighbors could get together, and if there happens to be a dam there, and they can get through all the nonsense they have to get through to get that dam approved for power. They
had been doing that in the past before all these regulations got
right.
So there's some of these sitting around in Vermont now.
Occasionally you can find a dam. I met a guy who bought a dam in New Hampshire that was operating, or that was able to operate, and he upgraded the turbine there. And I in Green Energy Times ran an article about a year and a half ago about a house in Vermont that was sitting next to a dam, and the house is for sale. And a person who wanted to buy it could have his own dam, own hydro dam.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, which was big enough to supply a house very easily.
I stayed in Ireland.
Yeah.
In a bed and breakfast.
Yep.
And the guy that owned it bought a dam. I mean,
yes.
it was a dam, you know, and he put in 2 turbines.
Okay.
And he was having his problems with the Irish government letting him pump his power back into the grid.
Of course.
But he succeeded.
Yeah, of course.
It was pretty, this was quite a while ago, so it was pretty neat.
Well, owning your own hydro dam is kind of an interesting thing to do.
Everybody should own one.
Everybody should own one. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica.
If it's the same one, I think it is.
Yes?
New renewables outpacing rising electricity demand for the first time.
Yeah. For the first time ever, investments in new renewables was more than enough to cover the rising global electricity demand in 2015. That is according to the first World Energy Investment Report published by the International Energy Agency. The IEA says that changes in investment indicate, quote, reorientation of the energy system, end quote. And
interesting wording, because that's what's going on.
That's what's happening. Basically, what this means is that globally, the energy generation is in what we could call a permanent recession, and if the generation is from fossil fuels or nuclear. Now, nuclear is still expanding. I'm going to predict that it will not still continue expanding.
Economics are going to dictate against it. It just costs too much money.
Right.
You can't really afford to build a new one.
Right. Even at really low oil prices and gas prices, you're still seeing
it isn't cutting it anymore.
Fossil fuels aren't making it. And
too cheap to meter never happened.
Except for wind power.
Yeah.
Wind power has become too cheap to meter in some cases, which
it is
why you can get it
now in parts of America. It is by far the cheapest form of electricity.
And you can actually buy wind power on a wind power plan. You can have it for free 9 hours a day in places.
Yeah.
Which means it's too cheap to meter.
Good point.
Yeah.
By the way, I mentioned some of these articles that are really good ones.
Yep.
This is a good article. If you want to get into depth, there's a lot of graphs in it.
Yes.
And they tell a lot of stories.
September 22nd, there was the day for that. Should we go on?
Yeah, let's move on.
Our next one is from CNN.
Interesting. Stephen Hawking and 374 other scientists slammed Trump for backing what Hawking calls the Parexit.
Yeah.
And it's a pun on the British Brexit, but it's about pulling out of the Paris Accords.
Yes. A group of 375 concerned scientists, including famed physicist Stephen Hawking, released an open letter sharply criticizing Donald Trump, citing the threat of climate change and blasting his push for the U.S. to leave the Paris Accord. CNN reached out to the Trump campaign for a response to the letter, but has not received one. Well, maybe they have by now. This is somewhat interesting to me because in the debate, which has happened since,
just Monday night,
Hillary Clinton said, Donald Trump says climate change is a hoax, and Donald Trump says, I never said that.
Said that. And then Hillary said, well, you did on 2012, such and such a day.
Yeah, she was prepared because she knew that he was going to try to weasel out of that one.
Absolutely. Well, that's in character, isn't it?
I've never seen a person who lied so blatantly and so continuously.
Well, she's a pretty good liar too.
I think he may have learned from her. I don't know, but I mean, he does it in a way which is just he'll say something and then deny that he said it in the next sentence, and literally, you know. I went to the moon last night. No, I didn't. I never said that.
Well, here is a quote from Hawking.
Yes.
The consequences of opting out of the global community would be severe and long-lasting for our planet's climate, and for the international credibility of the United States.
Yes, indeed. There's no question about that. Incidentally, Mike Pence, who is Donald Trump's would-be vice president, said, "Oh, I don't believe that human-caused climate change isn't happening."
Oh, he said that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Interesting. Okay, we're up to Friday, September 23rd.
Okay.
And we have a picture here.
I got a nice picture coming up.
Oh, isn't that a nice picture? This is from OregonLive.com.
Let me get the picture up.
There you go.
It is a nice picture.
It is.
These are hikers in, well, as it says, Olympic National Park.
Yep.
Nice place.
Nice place.
Okay, yes. And the title here is to celebrate national parks by fighting climate change.
This year,
and the national parks are being affected.
Oh, I guess. This year our country is celebrating 100 years of national parks. They are special places woven into the fabric of American life, which the Republican Party says that we should be willing to sell. I'm sorry, the article doesn't say that. I just kind of interjected that. From the iconic...
Well, there's people want to buy them.
Yeah, I'm sure there are, but you know, the Republican platform says we should be selling federal property, and they did not exclude the federal park system.
There are people eyeing these parks greedily.
In fact, as I looked at the platform, I was wondering whether they would want to sell Arlington National Cemetery.
If somebody offered them enough money, there would be people wanting them to sell.
I have no doubt. And you know, all they'd have to do is say, okay, you want to get into the cemetery and visit your grandfather's grave? It's going to cost you $20.
Make a deposit.
Yeah.
Make a donation.
These are special places woven into the fabric of American life, from iconic views of California's Yosemite Valley, Yosemite Valley, to our own Crater Lake, our own being Oregon. Yet these places are increasingly threatened by climate change, and boy, are they threatened by climate change.
I got a little bit of a takeaway from this article. Yeah. If we want our children to have the same opportunities, it's up to us, right here, right now.
Yep.
We must act on climate change if we want to keep Crater Lake blue, ensure glaciers remain in Glacier National Park.
I think that's hopeless.
They're down to about 3, I think.
I don't think we've got any possibility of maintaining those glaciers. And
protect our parks from erosion, fire, and flood.
Yep.
We must act on climate change if our nation's greatest archaeological sites, home to historic treasures, are to be preserved for the future generations.
Yep.
This is a good legacy right here. Protecting the parks is protecting the legacy we've promised to leave our children and grandchildren.
Yes. Yes. And any conservative that wants to sell these things had better face the fact that the people behind them included Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt and Richard Nixon, and you know, this is a conservative agenda as well as liberal. It's Republican as well as Democrat. The Republican Party that says that they want to sell federal lands has walked away from our past and our future. That's why I'm no longer a member of it.
Well, these parks, if privatized, will remain as parks, and they'll probably be maintained pretty well. But it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to get into them.
Yeah, well...
They won't be America's treasure anymore.
They won't be America's treasure. They won't be America's property. They could be sold to China.
Yeah, they're more likely to be sold to Walt Disney or somebody like that.
Oh, brother. Okay, let's get out of this one and go to Biomass Magazine.
Before we throw up. This is a good one. Distributed biogas. $11.8 billion market hidden in plain sight.
This is a fascinating article.
It is.
I mean,
this is good.
Every year in the United States, 37 million tons of food waste are sent to landfills. Now, it costs $125 a ton to dump that in the landfills.
Yeah.
That's the tipping fee. So 37 million times $125 is what it costs. This is $4.6 billion annually. We could use that to make biogas at 4,200 cubic feet per ton. This same amount of waste would power 5 million homes for the year. So
well, it's a found resource that we've just been overlooking.
We've been
it's
overlooking.
There.
It's there. It's right there.
It's a win-win situation.
You know, one of the things that I did this last week for Green Energy Times was I interviewed some people from the UK. This was fun. These guys in the UK were taking biogas, which is what you get from landfill sites, what you get from biomass sites.
Yeah.
You know,
this we're getting it right here out of our own landfill. Anaerobic
digesters and so forth. And you know, every municipal power station, waste station in the United States could generate biogas. And in fact, in China, I've read differing numbers, but the least was 1 million and the greatest was 5 million biodigesters people have in their own homes.
Exactly.
Where they're making gas that they're using for cooking. And they're cooking with the gas, and then they're creating the gas by dumping their kitchen waste into a box, and out of the other end of the box they get compost.
Well, I think that ultimately is the best solution.
Yeah.
One of the key articles here is the word distributed.
Yeah.
And you can't get any more distributed.
Yeah, than households. Home. Yeah. Anyway, this is a really fascinating article, and the people that I was interviewing in the UK were talking about taking that same biogas and running it through a process that they've got, which is it's an update of an old process called the Fischer-Tropsch
We've
process.
talked about that on the show.
Where you can start with biogas, and you can wind up with
almost any kind of fuel.
Almost anything you want, but gasoline. You can wind up with gasoline.
Absolutely.
So you could use your kitchen waste to power your car. I think we're talking about Back to the Future here, where the guy throws bananas.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Distributed fuel.
Yeah, distributed fuel. But this thing is a real project that could be brought about. $11.8 billion market. Okay.
Well, we got a picture coming up.
We do.
So let's get
and
it
this one I really like. This is a cool picture. This is we've seen these water vehicles that are up on jacks, but I want to point out, if you look closely here, there's that vertical orange thing that's a little bit to the right of center here, and right at the base of it you'll see two people, and
oh yeah,
they're big on this thing. You know, they're that orange thing might be 25 feet, 30 feet tall, do you think?
Well, it's at least 4 human heights. It's about 5 human heights.
So it's not huge. Yeah, it's not huge. This is working in the Great Lakes, LeadCo, and this is from Renews.
MHI Vestas, the name of a company.
Yep.
Lands U.S. icebreaker, and I have to mention, icebreaker isn't referring to an object. The name of this thing that they've given it is the icebreaker
project. It's the
icebreaker project.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in Lake Erie.
Okay, so we're going to have offshore wind power in Lake Erie, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who's been following this. The Lake Erie Energy Development Company has selected MHI Vestas to supply 6 V126 3.45 megawatt turbines for the 20.7 megawatt icebreaker freshwater offshore wind project in Ohio. LeadCo's president told Renews a decision had been made to use the Danish hardware, completing a shift away from the previous selected Siemens. Now that little piece of news is not all that interesting. What is interesting is we've got offshore wind underway in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, this was going to be a pilot project. They were only going to put up 1 turbine. Now they got it up to 6. So it's gone beyond the pilot stage.
Yes, it has. And what the issue here, and this is why it's called icebreaker, I suspect, the issue here is that unlike ocean water, which is hard to freeze, Fresh water is easy to freeze.
Yeah, so that's why they call it icebreaker.
Yeah, so they had to have some way of dealing with the lake ice, which could be a serious problem for offshore wind. But nevertheless,
well, that's one of the reasons, one of the things they're trying to prove by this.
That they can do it.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, this is a little takeaway here. LEEDCO, the Lake Erie Energy Development Company, has a 50-year lease on that land. So,
you know, in the UK where they have those big offshore wind projects,
yeah.
When I used to live in the UK, I lived in Kent and I lived in Devon, and one of the things that I loved to do was to look at the real estate advertisements in the, I forget, it was the London Times or something, and no, it wasn't, it was a weekly magazine, but anyway, in those days, which was 55 years ago, you could buy a nice little cottage in the UK for £2,700, you know, which would be $6,000. And you could also get leases on cottages and things like that. And they had leases that were 999-year leases. I'm not kidding.
Wow. Nobody lives that long.
I've never known anybody who reached 1,000.
A lot of the land in the UK is in the hands of, how would I call it, hereditary peerage.
Yeah.
These families have owned this land for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So a 999-year lease isn't unusual for these.
I read a thing about a young man. He's in his early 20s, and he was described as being the Duke of whatever. And the thing that mentioned this said that he owned half of London.
Wow.
And now I think they were talking about the city of London, which is not very big. It's
but only half of that puts you in a good spot. It's
wow.
like owning Wall Street.
Yeah, it's like owning Wall Street. You know. So anyway, we are up to Saturday, September 24th. And we have another one here.
Nice picture coming up.
Yes, this is an interesting one. It really is.
Well, I'll get into this one.
Yeah.
This is the world's first hydrogen passenger train coming to Germany.
And you hear this
Look at that train.
Yeah. This is from German Pulse. During the Berlin InnoTrans trade show in France, during the Berlin InnoTrade trade show, France Alstom unveiled the Coradia Island, the world's first hydrogen-powered passenger train, as it is bound to make its home in Germany. The train is essentially emissions-free. The only sounds it makes are from air resistance and the wheels making contact with the track, which I think that, you know, I think of the fact that I used to get waked up by a diesel engine going rom, 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 about 10 miles away.
Miles away. Right?
And this thing, maybe at the same time of night from when it got to within a couple of miles from my house, do you think I could have heard click, click as this thing hit the seams of the track? Yeah. Maybe I could, but somehow I don't think that would wake me up.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of takeaways here. These trains are going to replace diesels.
Yes.
They're not going to replace the electrified ones.
Yes.
So they're going to take diesels away.
Yes.
Hydrogen is stored in tanks on the trains, mixed with oxygen from the air, in fuel cells to produce electricity, which drives motors in the wheels.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a diesel electric, but it's not.
It's not. And they don't need to replace the electric trains because they've got lines that they get their power from, so you don't need to.
Exactly. So these are covering where, these are proposed to cover where the diesels are running now.
Right.
Where there's a significant advantage.
And those diesels, you know, you've got emissions from diesels. Certainly you've got a lot of noise from diesels. No question.
These things are going to be able to go up to 500 miles with 300 passengers on board.
On one load of hydrogen?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Germany should start seeing 60 or more of these trains hitting the rails in 2017 or 2018.
Wow.
So they're going into this big time.
Do you happen to know how they're storing the hydrogen on these trains? I don't remember.
Well, they're in reservoirs, and the reservoirs are at the tops of the train. They're hiding in the roof. So it's got to be liquid. It's got to be liquid hydrogen.
Liquid hydrogen is just not easy.
Well, it's a lot easier than gaseous hydrogen because you can't contain the gaseous hydrogen.
Well,
even steel, it passes through steel. So.
Yeah, I know, but liquid hydrogen is going to do the same thing because you've got to boil it away. But liquid hydrogen is, you've got to have that awfully cold in order to get it.
Or highly pressurized.
I don't know that you can pressurize it at room temperature to the point where you can.
I'm not sure.
But nevertheless, you know, one thing about it is when hydrogen escapes, it is not a like methane is a serious climate change gas, greenhouse gas, but hydrogen is not. It just combines with oxygen in the air and makes water.
Just better not be smoking anything with it.
Oh, you don't want to smoke. The other thing, of course, that I'm thinking about is what happens if there's an accident on one of these trains, because a spill of liquid hydrogen would be a nightmare.
I think it would evaporate rapidly.
It would evaporate rapidly. If it hit you, you know, if you had a splash on you, you'd get serious burns because it would be like 250, 300 degrees below zero. I forget what the temperature is that it boils at, but it's very, very cold.
Well, I'm sure that they have thought of that.
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
I'm sure they think that, at least, that they have a solution.
One would hope.
One would hope.
Okay, are we up to Renew Economy?
Let's move up to the next one, yeah. How the jaw-dropping fall in solar prices will change energy markets.
Oh man, this is, you know, we're seeing more and more of these just amazing things. Every time the solar prices have been bid lower, they're met with howls of derision by less cost-competitive rivals. The multiple bids for solar power below $30 per megawatt hour on a 350 megawatt tender in Abu Dhabi suggests that the projects are financially viable. They had 5 bids below 4 cents per kilowatt hour. This one was below 3 cents. Several of the bids were below 3 cents per kilowatt hour. This was 2.42 cents per kilowatt hour. This is for solar power. And I want to point out that wonderful deal that kept our power rates low in Vermont for 10 years was a power purchase agreement at 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour with Vermont Yankee that was made about 15 years ago. And when they said, you know, when that agreement ended, they said, we're going to give you a deal you can't refuse.
And we did.
Yeah, we did. They offered us nuclear power at 6.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and Hydro-Quebec offered us hydropower at 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Which one are you going to choose? So we went with a cheaper one, and which I think was absolutely the right decision. But the cheapest power we could get at that time was from a landfill gas system that cost 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And here we're talking about solar power at 2.42 cents per kilowatt hour.
It was an interesting takeaway here.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about this Électricité de France,
yes,
building or wanting to build this nuclear plant.
Yeah.
They were one of the low bidders here. Yes. They went in at 2.5 cents.
Yeah.
25.33. That's their bid. That's 1/5 of the price that they're wanting for their nuclear energy in England. Yes. 1/5. 1/5. 20%.
Yeah, 20% at 2.5 cents. I think it's significantly less than a fifth.
Well, the article.
I mean, significantly.
The article said it was a fifth.
It's I think closer to a seventh, because they're going to be getting over 17 cents per kilowatt hour for their power, and this thing is 2.4. They were bidding 2.5.
Well, they bid 25.33.
Yeah, that's a fifth of 12 and a half. Yeah. But they want 17 and a half.
They want 17, don't they? So the article was even a little bit conservative there.
Yes, it was. Anyway,
now let's move along.
Move along to Sunday, September 25th.
By the way, I got this one highlighted. I don't know who said it, but it was part of this article. There's no reason why the cost of solar will ever increase again.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. There is no reason. It's
getting cheaper all the time.
It's getting to the point, you know, this Jeremy Rifkin thing of solar and wind power have got marginal costs that approach zero, which means that at some point, people who are running power companies will be giving power away because they will have some reason for wanting to have customers take this power, and it's already happened. You know, this overnight power in Texas being for free. People can get power plants where they buy wind power, and they can have as much electricity as they want for free.
And if you've got a good storage system, It's costing you nothing. You load it up at
Absolutely.
night.
You have to pay a connect fee, and that's all. Okay. Are we on to Planet Save?
We're on to the next one.
Okay,
here.
this is Planet Save on Sunday, September 25th.
Open source climate change data from NASA, NOAA, and others available for the first time. You got to explain what that means. I think you will.
This is this the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy?
It is that.
Okay. White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, along with the government and industry supporters, including Microsoft and Google, launched a partnership to harness the data revolution to strengthen climate resilience efforts and streamline climate data delivery and inform researchers and data providers, and I feel like saying blah, 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 blah.
Well, what it means is they're getting some good data for a change from the government.
Yes.
Because they've been getting some kind of
Bad data.
Really we've talked about that.
Yeah,
too.
and it's really kind of scandalous because the thing that I think is the worst is that the Energy and Information Administration, which is supposed to be providing Congress with the data that it needs to make decisions, when it projects renewable power for the future, always is way off. 100% of the time, they're way off.
Yeah, I don't even know where they're getting these numbers.
They will say we will achieve 1.1% in penetration of solar power by 2040, when they've already got 1.5% or 1.25% by their own data.
Yeah.
And but that's from a different office in the DOE. What they're trying to do here is talk about better data, and the picture.
That's exactly it.
The picture here is a picture of a California vineyard, and we've had serious problems with the vineyards. They could look like this, but that doesn't mean that they're not. The grapes are shriveling, and so
So California wine is going to be expensive in the next.
Well,
years.
we've had California is the source of huge quantities of food.
Absolutely.
We buy lettuce in Vermont that was grown in California, and with the drought out there, it's affected everything. So
we probably haven't noticed it because it's been a slow climb, but I'm sure that produce coming out of the California Valley has been going up.
And the result of that is that farmers who are growing produce in Vermont are charging higher prices.
Because they can get away with it.
Well, it's not. I don't know that it's because they can get away with it. But if you go to a supermarket, you go to a supermarket and you see a head of lettuce for $2 that came from California, and it isn't as fresh and it's not as good as yours. Why would you take $1 for that the head of lettuce you sell?
Bingo. Bingo.
So I don't feel bad about that. The farmers should be making a living just like everybody else. But we've got a piece here from The National.
The National, I think you're getting. No,
am I getting?
I'm slow.
Okay, The National, and we've already referred to
base on this one, but we'll do it again.
Yep.
Summer special sale on solar energy, an interesting precedent.
That's right. An analyst for Bloomberg believes the low price for solar power in Abu Dhabi Electricity and Water Authority auction should not be understood as a simple price of power. The winning bid, 2.42 cents per kilowatt hour, is only for 9 months a year. During the summer, the Abu Dhabi Electric and Water Authority will pay 1.6 times that, which is about 3.87 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay.
It's not bad.
I mean, we're still at very, very low prices.
What's a peak price? I mean,
it's hard.
In Abu Dhabi, it gets hot.
Yeah.
In the summertime, they use a lot of air conditioning.
Yeah, and they have to. I mean, you have to use a lot of air conditioning if you're going to have an indoor ski slope at a mall.
And they do have
They have that. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, 3.87 cents per kilowatt hour. The high price is still a very low price.
Yeah, that's much lower
that's
than
the peak price. Peak price for electricity on hot days in the United States is typically 10 times that amount in hot places.
Well, that's not the retail level.
No, the retail level, it stays low.
Yeah.
It's levelized, yeah.
But yeah, that's what the power companies are paying.
Vermont, Green Mountain Power has talked. The people there have told me that they have paid prices in the winter, when it's really cold and the power demand is high because of that, they've paid 60 cents per kilowatt hour for power that they were selling to their customers for 15 cents per kilowatt hour.
Well, it's part of the deal.
It's part of the deal.
Part of the deal.
Okay.
Let's move along.
Australian Financial Review.
Don't blame South Australia's power shock on renewables.
Yeah, and by the way, today in the news, there was a whole raft of news that came out of South Australia because they had a huge failure. The entire state lost power.
This just happened.
It just happened yesterday, and the government is saying it's because those fools in South Australia have relied on renewable power. They shouldn't be doing that. Their power is 41%, or their goal is 41. Their power is 41% renewable. It's 41. It's largely from wind. And if they hadn't had this storm that knocked all over those transmission lines and shorted them out, which caused all the power system in South Australia to pull off the system because they didn't want to fry themselves. They're saying this is because of wind power, which it is actually. The wind power from the storm knocked over the transmission lines and shut them off. But nevertheless,
I got a picture here. I don't know if it belongs in this one or the next one.
It's the next one.
It up.
Fracking field?
No, it's wind turbines.
Oh, it is. By golly. It's wind turbines. Yeah, I had scrolled it off my screen. There's wind turbines in South Australia.
Yeah, it's about this one.
A report from the Grattan Institute says that the blame for July's high power prices in South Australia should not be placed on renewables. It highlighted the need for federal government to have more effective climate policy as older brown and black coal-fired power stations prepare to exit the nation's energy mix. This is going to be a hot issue with that power outage that I was just talking about. The federal anti-wind, anti-solar federal government is saying it's because you people were relying on renewable power. And the local power authority is saying, no, it's because these transmissions, the system, the towers fell over in the high winds, which by the way, you should see them. They're crumpled up, lying on their side. Huge.
Pretty high wind.
Yeah, this was hurricane force winds in a winter storm.
Yeah, it's winter down there.
It's winter down there. So this is, an early spring storm, but it's basically a winter storm hitting South Australia from the south, which means that it's like a nor'easter coming into New England, coming from the nor'easter. The storm would come from the south, but in this case, it would be like a
storm coming from the north.
It would be like a storm coming from the north, and it's a bad storm, and it knocked over. It will take days to get everything cleaned up, but most of the power has been restored.
Well, there's some strange stuff going on in Australia with the coal burning plants, the brown and black coal. They've been owned by wealthy people for a long time. These people have influence in the government.
Yep.
The government's trying to subsidize them. I mean, it's a mess. I guess we've talked about it.
We have.
The people want renewables, and the federal government down there wants coal.
Yeah, and under Tony Abbott, the federal they were saying they were going to be the coal producers for the world.
But the world doesn't want it.
The world, Tony Abbott says we're going to be the coal center for the world. We're going to be the place people go to buy coal. And the first thing that happened, within a week, both India and China said, by the way, we're not going to buy coal anymore from overseas.
And they both were buying a lot of coal.
That's what Tony Abbott was hoping would be the location for their coal. Okay, we're up to Monday, September 26th, and this is Clean Technica.
And we got a picture for this one.
We do indeed.
Let's pull it up.
And that is distressing.
That is something. That is really something. That's a fracking field.
That is a fracking field. Every one of those little things that looks like, housing development with driveways and stuff.
That's a well.
Every one of those is a well. Yeah.
Well, satellites link, this is very important. Satellites link 2012 East Texas earthquake to wastewater injection well.
Right. This is from Clean Technica. A new study from research scientists at Stanford University has linked a 4.8 magnitude earthquake recorded in East Texas in 2012 to the now common oil tech industry practice of hydraulic fracturing or fracking and the accompanying wastewater injection wells. The study was done by use of satellite data.
Well, the article says that this is definite.
Yeah.
They've definitively made that leak.
Yes.
Scary.
It's scary.
And by the way, the reason why they even have these deep water wells there is that the brackish water commonly exists with oil and gas.
Yep.
So they pump it out.
Yep.
They can't use it. They don't know what to do with it, so they pump it back down.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Except
they're pumping it back down, and it's interfering with the strata down there.
Yeah, and it's going into a different place than it came from.
That's
because
true.
They're bringing the gas out, and the oil out from one place, putting the water down in another. And Oklahoma, which is not all that big a state compared to California, is now got, and which used to have on average, one earthquake every 18 months or something like that, and is now getting about 3 a day.
Yeah, there was a pretty bad one just about a month ago.
Yes.
That's also been linked to fracking.
Yes.
I won't say definitively, but it's suspect.
My guess is they're going to make it definitive. And the companies that are doing that are going to start facing progressively more numbers of lawsuits, I think. So should we go on?
I would imagine their productivity gets hurt too when they have earthquakes.
Yes. Well, there was one fracking company that closed down a bunch of wells because of an earthquake.
Because they were damaged.
There was a lot of, like 12 wells. No, it was because they were being responsible. They just said, if we're going to cause earthquakes, this is not a business that we want to be in. That's what they said.
Interesting. Well, okay.
Maybe they were going broke anyway, But, Okay.
Well, let's wish Gandhi a happy birthday.
Yes, Daily Pioneer had brought this to us.
Yep. India to ratify Paris climate deal on Gandhi's birthday.
How about that? In a major announcement, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, said India will ratify the Paris Climate Change Agreement on Mohandas Gandhi's birth anniversary of October 2nd. The date to ratify the COP21 protocol was chosen as Gandhi's life was an example of how to leave a minimum carbon footprint. So there you have it.
Well, he mentioned that there is a looming threat to global warming, due to global warming, to many coastal countries and cities.
Yeah, including
parts of India.
New York City.
New York, yeah.
Miami.
I don't think that Modi cared much about New York City.
No, I don't think that was. Yeah, I think if you look at the cities in the world, I think probably more than half of the major cities in the world are located in places that are subject to ocean flooding.
Well, it sort of makes sense.
That's
when they founded these cities, they were seaports.
Yep, that's right. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, September 27th.
And we got a picture coming up here,
A picture.
too.
Look at that little thing. That's a little hydro dam.
This is interesting because we talked about a dam in Vermont last week, and I had read the article in depth and clicked on some of the links. And the dam up in Vermont that they're talking about looks very much like this one. I thought it was the same one. It's curved like that.
It might actually have been the same one, except I happen to know where that
No, this one
dam
is coming from a company called Statkraft.
Yeah, it's true, but Statkraft, which is involved in the article,
yes,
owns that dam, but it's not where the article is from.
Oh,
so
okay.
this is from Renews. Renews.
Here. Statkraft uncorks Albanian hydro.
Statkraft has officially opened the 73 megawatt Banja hydro power plant in Albania, the first of two projects that will make up a 256 MW Deval hydro scheme. The plant, which is located 65 kilometers southeast of the capital of Tirana, is Statkraft's first in the country and will generate about 255 gigawatt hours of electricity per year. That dam, by the way, is in Norway.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I would think that it could be in
Well, it could be anywhere in this mountain. It could be in Vermont because there's one in Vermont that looks just like it.
Should we go on from that? There's not a whole lot of.
What did I? For 65 clicks is 40 miles in case you're interested.
Okay.
And the dam is 250 feet high, and it creates a 5 square mile reservoir.
Wow.
So they're not fooling around.
No, they're not. Okay, should we go on? Vermont
let's
Public
move on
Radio.
to the next one.
Yep.
Vermont Yankee to sell. Oh, this is a biggie. This is local.
There's also a picture there.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah,
that?
let me get the picture.
So everybody can see this box. I mean, if you want to buy that box and its contents, you can do it.
It's
You
for
can
sale,
buy it. It's
yeah.
for sale.
Vermont Yankee to sell equipment and supplies worth $20 million at a public auction.
Yeah.
Did they say when this auction is going to be held?
They do. In the article, I'm sorry to say it's not in the stuff that I've got here, but a person who's interested could go to the article. It's at the website in the September 27th. It's a Vermont Public Radio thing, which means it's in the U.S. section of the posting for the day. The owners of the Vermont Yankee plant had to keep a lot of spare parts around to keep the facility running. While the plant was open, the VY had a warehouse full of equipment that workers might need in case something broke down. It closed in December 2014, and now the plant is auctioning off inventory. And that, by the way, includes old light bulbs.
Used?
No, new condition light bulbs.
But nobody wants
But they're incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah.
So don't buy them.
Well, it's still used for them here and there, like in closets or outdoor light.
I don't know. You know, my brother lived in Liberia. He told me they always used incandescent lights in their closets because otherwise everything in there would go moldy. And you just put an incandescent light in there, leave it on all the time. It would keep the closet dry. And you know, incandescents are still used in refrigerators and in ovens. So there is still a use.
A good platform is like personnel sensor lights on the side of your house.
Okay.
You know, they go on instantly and stay on for 30 seconds and go off.
Well, I think you could do that just as well with LEDs now.
You can, but LEDs cost more money.
Yeah.
That's all. And they're getting real cheap because they're subsidized.
They are. Okay.
There's a quick takeaway here.
Yeah. 30
tractor-trailer loads of surplus inventory were hauled to an enormous warehouse in Brattleboro for the public. 30 truckloads!
Yeah, and by the way, that thing that you see on the screen is apparently a box full of signs.
That's exactly what it is.
That say radioactive, and I admit, it looks like some kind of locked box that must contain some mysterious and horrible object that will fry you if you get near it. But no, according to this, it's just signs. And they would not be putting up nuclear materials for auction because they...
No, they're not putting up... No.
It's not going to happen.
No. These are signs.
If a meter that has a tiny amount of nuclear radioactive material because it's needed to calibrate it is stolen or lost, that's reported to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They're very strict about this. They do indeed. Okay.
There's a little bit of a takeaway here. The reason why they have so much is these guys were stockpiling these things, as you said, in case they needed it.
Yes.
And the reason behind that is to have all of this stuff on hand because it costs so much when the plant was down.
Yes.
So they wanted to minimize that. So I think it was probably a wise thing to do, but now they're stuck with $20 million worth of stuff.
Right. We've got to move on because we've got 5 items and only about 11 minutes to do them.
Well, the western states are poised to slash carbon emissions.
Yep.
And we've touched base on this one before.
Right. Natural Resources Defense Council on September 27th, the D.C. Court of Appeals is hearing challengers' arguments against the Clean Power Plan. But many power companies are not waiting for the courts to resolve the legal challenges. Instead, they're cutting carbon emissions already and accelerating the shift to clean energy. Now, there's 2 reasons to do that. One is to save the climate and get good PR for doing it. And the other, interestingly enough, is because it's a whole lot cheaper than the alternative. So, there you have it.
Well, it's interesting because some of these same utilities that are doing this are part of the suit.
Yes. You know, what can you say? And places that are going to fulfill the plan's goals are also states are also part of the suit.
Yeah.
You know.
But they're
Arkansas decided that they were going to cut.
They're covering their bets.
Yeah, Arkansas decided it was going to shut down a single coal burning power plant and replace it with something that wasn't coal burning, and as a result of that, they're almost halfway to the goal.
Well, the article mentioned here, and this is a good takeaway, power companies are able to purchase wind power at an average price of $20 a megawatt hour. That's 20 cents. That's 2 cents.
2 cents.
2 cents
a
kilowatt hour.
That was the 2015 Wind Technologies Market Report, which
Yep.
was published by the US DOE, gave that figure. And that's the
lowest ever.
average price of wind power. It is the cheapest source of electricity we've got in this country.
America, right
and
now.
by the way, you know this business about the wind isn't always blowing?
Yeah.
Well, when you are a wind turbine owner and you enter into a power purchase agreement, you have to provide that power regardless of whether the wind is blowing or not.
Yeah. It's a
So
deal.
if you can't give it because the wind,
gotta buy it.
you got to buy it and you got to sell it.
Yeah.
And so that 2 cents includes a higher price for demand when wind power is down. I mean, this is not a simple thing of the wind not always blowing. Okay, we got to move on.
Yeah, we got a picture coming up. Here.
We've got it. It's there. There it is.
New York City accelerates emissions efforts in face of daunting sea level rise.
This is from,
That's daunting for
yeah,
them.
this is from The Guardian. New York City is set to be increasingly challenged by sea level rises caused by melting glaciers and thermal expansion of the ocean as the planet warms. By 2100, the year 2100, sea levels could be up as much as 50 inches higher than today in New York, a scenario that has prompted the city to pledge billions of dollars for flood defenses and adaptation. Now, if
Well, they got a big problem there.
they do indeed, and you know, just building a dike around Manhattan, that
It's
would be,
going to be the solution, I think.
but
it's not gonna
the
be easy.
cost of that is going to be
Oh,
unbelievable.
absolutely. New York Harbor's deep.
Well, but just adding a 5 foot tall dike around Manhattan would
Well, that's what I'm
be
saying.
many billions of
New York
dollars.
Harbor's deep, so that dike.
Oh, it would be on a deep foundation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on. CNN.
Okay, most of the world breathes polluted air, according to the World Health Organization.
Yep. Almost all of us on Earth, 92% of the world's people now breathe polluted air, the World Health Organization says. An interactive map based on global air pollution data shows places where outdoor air quality fails to meet WHO guidelines. About 3 million deaths each year can be linked to exposure to outdoor air pollution. And by the way, that means one person dies on average every 10 seconds. And that is about the rate at which soldiers and sailors died during the Second World War. We are killing off large parts of the population, and not just, this is not people we don't know in Vietnam. This is not people we don't know in the Ukraine during the Second World War. This is people in Vermont, among other things. And what do they die of?
It's distributed.
It's distributed. They die of lung cancer, they die of asthma, they die of emphysema, they die of heart conditions and circulatory conditions. And everybody who's got medical insurance and everybody who pays taxes is paying for this and paying for all the sick people who don't die early. This is a very expensive problem.
Well, we've talked about this on the show.
Yep.
There's a quick takeaway here.
Yep.
This is a concerning public health issue as air pollution can harm your lungs, heart, and even brain,
Brain.
with the potential to cause premature death.
No wonder Donald Trump is denying climate change. He's been exposed to air pollution.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our next item, by the way, it
Has to
talks
do with-
about Donald
has to
Trump,
do with
and
Trump.
it comes from Scientific American.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Trump and Clinton argue over climate change. Now, this just happened, didn't
Yeah,
it?
it did. 12 minutes into the first face-to-face encounter between the candidates, Clinton raised the issue of climate change by pointing to Trump's past claims that question the science behind rising temperatures and the assertion that climate change was a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese. I did not, said Trump. I do not say that. And of course, the Chinese are putting twice as much money into this as the United States. And he says it's something that they're inflicting on us in order to make us uncompetitive on the
Well,
world
if you don't
market.
think about it, it sounds logical.
Oh, nothing about Donald Trump is logical.
No,
He is,
it isn't logical. It just sounds logical until you start thinking about
he
it.
is the biggest fool I've ever heard of. Really. I mean, honestly, how can anybody... And I'm sorry. We're talking about a candidate who's being backed by conservatives, and he says, debt? I love debt. I'm the
we can
king
print
of
more
debt. You don't have to worry about default. You print your own money. And fiscal conservatives are backing this guy because they say he's, what, better than Hillary? I'm sorry, this is not an election in which you choose between the lesser of two evils. This is election an election in which you vote against the greater of two evils. And there's a slight difference between the two of those. There. I cannot imagine two candidates they are the two candidates I would hate to have the most.
Well, we're not presented with a very good choice.
Yes, we are. We can vote. Here am I. You know, a guy who voted Republican most of his life, who used to be, until Donald Trump was endorsed by the National Rifle Association, a life member. That prompted me to resign. I'm going to vote for Jill Stein.
Oh my. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to do it when I leave this room.
Socialist, everybody. Socialist, Jill Stein. That's me, because she's the closest to my values.
Well, I've watched a couple of things she said, and she makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, we've got 3 minutes to talk about vtdigger.org.
We've only got one item left.
Yeah, that's true, but let's talk about it.
Well, I just wanted to...
Oh, you want to talk more about Donald Trump?
Well, just set the record straight about what he said and when.
Yeah?
Clinton referred to a tweet by Trump on November 6, 2012, when he said, and this is a quote, "The concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing not
He didn't say that. He never says that.
Years later, Trump said the tweet was a joke.
A joke. This is an easy thing for him to do. Anything that he says that he wants to deny, he just says, oh yeah, I said that, but it was a joke. Yeah.
I'm in ice storm rolls from Texas to Tennessee. I'm in Los Angeles and it's freezing. Global warming is a total and a very expensive hoax. Man, oh well. Let's move on to.
I'm sorry.
Let's move on to Vermont Digger here.
All right. This is VT Digger. What do we got for a title on this?
Vermont Department of Public Service issues draft energy planning standards.
Vermont Department of Public Service released a public review draft of the energy planning determination standards and recommendations. The department is due to issue a final standards and recommendations by November 1st, which is why we're bringing this up, so everybody can look at it who wants to. The public is encouraged to comment on the draft standards and recommendations through October 20th, and you can go to the geoharvey.com, look at the entry for, what is this, September 28th. Click on vtdigger.org, it's in the probably at the very bottom of the...
It'll come right up. Yeah.
And you click
you can go to Vermont Digger. I'm sure you can find it.
Well, actually, you can do a Google search for Vermont Department of Public Service and then to see what's there, because they're going to have that all there. And the VT Digger...
Well, this is a fairly important issue.
It is an important issue.
And it has a lot to do with local input. But the government is saying, we'll give you local input, but you got to have a plan.
Yeah. And by the way, that's an important thing too, because anybody who's going to oppose utility scale solar power or utility, big wind turbines, things like that, I'm not valuing their opposition to those very highly until they come up with an alternative plan. Absolutely. Because the plans that I'm seeing don't cut it. And, not everybody can have solar panels on their roofs. I'd love to have everybody have solar panels on their roofs. I think that would be great. But only 1 person in 6 can do that, according to the US DOE. We've got to have a plan that stops climate change, because otherwise Vermont is going to turn into a very different state, and it's not going to be pretty. I'm sorry.
I hear you.
Well, we can plant, we're going to lose our apples and maple trees. We can plant pawpaws.
And peaches.
And peaches, yeah. I mean, we're going to lose our hemlocks, and we're going to lose all the trees that provide our fall colors, but we can plant other trees that provide fall colors. We just have to import them from North Carolina. Time to go. Sorry.
Okay, guys.
See you next time.
It is that time, isn't it?
Yep. See you next time. Have fun. Have a good week.
Gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.